Let's begin our discussion of Immanuel Kant by identifying the text that we are going to use. We're going to use the Cambridge texts in the History of Philosophy version, and this is Immanuel Kant's groundwork of the metaphysics of morals. I will skip the very long introduction of these translation and go immediately to the text of Immanuel Kant. And I think we will find that more or less very closely to where we are now. And I'd like to begin here. This is the preface of Kant. I'd like to begin with the Stoic background to Kant's ethics. Stoicism is such an in thing right now because of recent publications on Stoicism, but Kant also has a Stoic background. The first step in Kant's project is to identify the proper subject matter of ethics, as has been shown in the introduction to Kant's groundwork. Kant argues that we must distinguish between genuine moral judgments and related considerations that are not strictly moral. Kant begins his treatise with what might seem to be a kind of historical digression, but which actually turns out to be crucial to his method. He refers obliquely to the division of three subjects within ancient Greek philosophy. He clearly has in mind, more specifically, the Stoics, a school founded by Zeno of Citium and his students Chrysippus and Cleanthes, who taught under the colonnaded covered walkways of the marketplace in ancient Athens, known in Greek as a stoa. Kant explains in this section, which I'm now highlighting for everyone. Ancient Greek philosophy was divided into three sciences: physics, ethics, and logic. This division is perfectly suitable to the nature of the subject, and there's no need to improve upon it except perhaps to add its principle, partly so as to ensure its completeness, and partly so as to be able to determine correctly the necessary subdivisions. I did say that this is of Stoic background. The Stoics were famous for teaching and practicing philosophy that emphasized living a morally good life that was indifferent to the ups and downs of fortune. Even in the worst of calamities, if one loses all one's wealth, becomes enslaved or captured by the enemies, has one city destroyed by enemies, is imprisoned, tortured, betrayed, or even put to death, nothing that is done to a person need take away the only true value available to human beings, which is to preserve a good will and good intentions, to act rightly in so far as one is able, and never to will evil. Kant's works on the foundations or groundwork of morals in some ways belongs to the tradition of Stoic handbooks on moral philosophy, including Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and Epictetus's Enchiridion. It was specifically in order to advance an ethical philosophy of life that the Stoics, and also we can say the Epicureans, divided all knowledge into the three categories Kant mentions here. To live the morally good life, the Stoics in particular believe one must begin by applying logic and science to understand that death and the gods are nothing to fear. The interrelation of this subject matters in philosophy, and more importantly, in some ways, their distinction and the differences between them are of vital concern to Kant's efforts to uncover the transcendental grounds of morals. Without distinguishing correctly between the proper subject matter of empirical science and ethics, identifying the field of ethics and moral judgment, we cannot isolate the appropriate given required by Kant's transcendental method. In order to proceed to the transcendental question and its synthetic a priori answers in a metaphysics of morals, and here I encourage you to go back to the introductory lecture, we see that Kant will investigate at physics, ethics, and logic. Kant next proceeds to divide up the disciplines of the natural sciences and moral philosophy. The distinction he offers follows a basic Aristotelian division between the formal and the material sciences. Logic is identified as formal philosophy, concerned with the structure of reasoning, while material philosophy is dedicated to the content of thought, which Kant further divides into two subcategories. Material philosophy involves specific objects of study, distinguished by Kant according to their respective laws, designated by Kant and understood as laws of nature and laws of freedom. Let's read the succeeding paragraph. All rational cognition is either material and concerned with some object, or formal and occupied only with the form of the understanding and of reason itself, and with the universal rules of thinking in general, without distinction of objects. Formal philosophy is called logic, whereas material philosophy, which has to do with the determinate objects and the laws to which they are subject, is in turn divided into two. For these laws are either laws of nature or laws of freedom. The science of the first is called physics, that of the other is ethics. The former is also called doctrine of nature, the latter, doctrine of morals. Let's try to talk about what is being said here. So we started by looking at the division, that there is a division between the three. And there's a reason why I've organized it this way, because you'd see that if when he creates the distinction eventually between what he calls as a material science and a formal science, you'd understand why there is a need to divide the two. No, logic, if you're familiar with logic, is strictly formal, whereas physics and ethics are material for Kant. And the materiality of these two, though they are very much related to each other, will vary depending also on the, and let me use a different color to draw this arrow, depending on the principle that will be utilized in order to that is the concern of these two fields. Yes, they're both material, but there's a difference between the concerns. No, here you see laws of nature, which she will also eventually call doctrine of nature. And on the other hand, you will see laws of freedom, which she will also call doctrine of morals. So that's what we have seen so far Kant is talking about. So laws of nature are studied by physics, also designated as the natural philosophy or the empirical sciences. Ethics, by contrast, is concerned with the laws of freedom, as we said. The contrast Kant evidently means to invoke is that between the deterministic laws that govern natural physical phenomenon and the principles of moral decision making involving free choice for which moral agents are morally responsible, there's a very huge distinction between these two. Physical phenomena are unfree, since we do not imagine the events in the material world come about through the exercise of free choice, at least on our part of the physical order of physical entities in the physical world. Moral phenomena, by comparison, are often assumed to result from free will or free moral decision making. Whether it is accurate to portray ethics as involving laws of freedom, according to the common conception that there are free agents who freely choose their actions and are thereby morally responsible for their conduct, should remain an open question until Kant has completed this entire inquiry, or better yet, until we're done with this inquiry. For the time being, it should suffice to note that roughly following the same division as the Stoic philosophers, Kant draws a sharp distinction between the natural empirical sciences, physics for this matter, and ethics. This distinction turns out to be essential for Kant's specification of ethical judgment as the given for his exploration of the transcendental ground of morality. Kant's reference to theoretical ethics as a study of the laws of freedom is crucial in turn to his foundation of the metaphysics of morals. If you like this type of video, I hope you would consider liking, sharing, and even subscribing to this YouTube channel, Samo't sa Simula. Thank you very much.